Robert Greene discovered something that has shattered 2,500 years of male philosophy. There is an invisible force that controls your decisions, your emotions, your very identity as a man. And it doesn't come from where you think. Women don't need to seduce you to have power over you. They use something much more primitive, something that directly attacks your male nervous system. While you think you're in control, your biology is being hacked by behavioral patterns that have evolved over millions of years. The question that will shatter your worldview is this: what if everything you believe about attraction, relationships, and male power is a carefully constructed illusion? What if the real game has already begun before you even realize you're playing? Greene spent decades studying the masters of historical manipulation and discovered that women have developed psychological strategies that make Machiavelli look like an amateur. You're being played right now and you don't even know it. Jeff Bezos, for years the richest man in the world. He built a $200 billion empire. He controlled algorithms that influenced billions of people. But in 2019, a woman achieved something no competitor, government, or regulator had ever done. She made him publicly destroy his own reputation. MacKenzie Scott didn't need lawyers, blackmail, or threats. She simply applied what Greene calls the law of emotional emptiness. While Bezos was building Amazon, she was building something more powerful: invisible emotional dependence. Nietzsche wrote about the Übermensch, the Superman who transcends human limitations. But even the Übermensch has a fatal blind spot. The need for female validation is hardwired into our reptilian DNA. Neurological studies from Harvard University show that the male brain produces 5x more dopamine when receiving female approval versus male approval. This is not a moral weakness, it is neurological architecture. Greene found that women have evolutionarily learned to exploit this very vulnerability through 3 psychological mechanisms that operate below the level of male consciousness. First revelation: the manipulation of emotional scarcity. Imagine an experiment. Stanford Lab, 2018. Men hooked up to brain scanners receive constant attention from a woman for 30 minutes. Then the attention is abruptly withdrawn. What happens in the brain? The same region that activates during cocaine withdrawal lights up like a Christmas tree. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational decision-making, literally shuts down. Greene calls this induced emotional hunger. It's not consciousness, it's evolution. For 200,000 years, the women who survived were those who obtained resources from men without relying solely on physical strength. They developed sophisticated social technologies. But here's where it gets disturbing. The same experiment was repeated with 2,000 men from different social classes, ages, and cultural backgrounds. CEOs of multinational corporations, factory workers, doctors, artists. The result? Identical. The neural response is universal. It doesn't matter your IQ, your experience, or your social status. The male brain architecture has this evolutionary blind spot built in. Greene discovered through historical analysis that women like Anne Boleyn, who seduced and controlled Henry VIII, used exactly this technique, creating emotional abundance followed by sudden scarcity. Henry VIII killed 2 wives, defied the Pope, and divided England just to have constant access to Anne's validation. A man who controlled millions of people became the emotional slave of a woman who understood behavioral neurology 500 years before it was invented. Stanford neuroscientist Dr. Robert Sapolsky has mapped out exactly how this works. When we receive female attention, 3 brain systems fire simultaneously. The reward system releases dopamine, the attachment system releases oxytocin, and the reproductive system increases testosterone. It's a neurochemical firestorm that hijacks our judgment. But when that attention is withdrawn, only one system remains active: the hunger system. Literally the same region that makes us reach for food when we're hungry. Your need for female validation isn't emotional, it's biological, it's survival. And women have evolved to identify and exploit this very vulnerability. Second revelation: the paradox of controlled vulnerability. Have you ever noticed how the most powerful women in relationships are also the ones who display the most fragility? This is not a contradiction. It is a strategy. Researchers at UCLA have found that men have an automatic hormonal response to female fragility. Testosterone increases by 40%, cortisol decreases by 60%. You literally become more aggressive and less anxious. Your brain interprets this as an opportunity to be a hero, a protector, a provider. But here's the neurochemical trick. This response can be artificially activated through microfacial expressions, specific tone of voice, and precise emotional timing. Greene analyzed recordings of divorce court proceedings over a 10-year period. He discovered a disturbing pattern. Women who secured the most favorable settlements were not the ones who were most aggressive or legally prepared. They were the ones who demonstrated controlled vulnerability at just the right moment. They knew when to cry, when to waver, when to show weakness. Lawyers and judges, all experienced men trained to detect manipulation, fell into the same neurological trap over and over again. Female vulnerability activates what evolutionary psychologists call the white knight response. It's a biological program as old as humanity itself. But there's a deeper layer that Greene discovered by studying the behavior of high-power couples. Controlled vulnerability doesn't work just once. It creates a cycle of dependency. Every time you save or protect a woman, your brain releases a dose of dopamine and serotonin. You literally become addicted to being her hero. But here's the devastating trick. Vulnerability is never completely resolved. There's always a new crisis, a new problem, a new situation where she needs you. Third revelation, the hijacking of male identity. This is perhaps the most disturbing of all. Women don't just manipulate your emotions, they redefine your identity. Psychologist Dr. Jordan Peterson has identified something he calls gradual behavioral shaping. Women, through selective approval and subtle disapproval, slowly reshape the male personality. You begin to avoid behaviors that generate disapproval and amplify behaviors that generate approval. Within 6 months, you are no longer the same person. Within 2 years, you may not recognize who you were before. Greene studied this in long-term relationships and found that men go through 3 distinct phases. Phase 1, conquest. You are your own person, confident, independent. Phase 2, adaptation. You begin to modify your behaviors to maintain harmony. Phase 3, dissolution. Your original personality disappears completely. The man who emerges from Phase 3 is a tamed, softened, and controlled version of the original. Greene calls this the death of the masculine essence. And the cruelest part? You don't even realize it's happening. It's an erosion as gradual as water carving away at a stone. Fourth revelation, the illusion of choice. You think you are making decisions in relationships, but behavioral neuroscience proves otherwise. Dr. Antonio Damasio, through neuroimaging studies, discovered that emotional decisions are made 7 seconds before rational consciousness realizes. Women, through millions of years of evolution, have learned to influence these pre-conscious decisions. They don't convince your rational mind, they convince your primitive limbic system. When you think you're making a choice, you're actually just rationalizing a decision that has already been made by neurological impulses that have been cleverly manipulated. Greene tested this in controlled settings. Men exposed to specific cues, tone of voice, body posture, timing of eye contact made predictably different decisions even when given identical information. Male free choice in relationships is largely an illusion. You are responding to evolutionary stimuli that have been programmed into your DNA for millions of years. And women, consciously or unconsciously, know exactly which buttons to push to get the responses they want. Dr. Helen Fisher, an anthropologist who has studied the brain chemistry of love for 40 years, confirms what Greene has found empirically. Women have a natural evolutionary advantage in reading microfacial expressions. Women process 16 emotional signals per second versus the 4 signals men process. This is not intellectual superiority, it is evolutionary specialization. While men evolved to focus on specific targets, women evolved to map complex social dynamics. Neuroscientist Dr. Luann Brizendine, through MRI, proved that female brains have 11% more neurons in the areas responsible for language and social observation. They literally see behavioral patterns that are invisible to you. Greene studied Cleopatra, who controlled two of the most powerful men in Rome, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. She was not the most beautiful woman in Egypt. She was the most strategic. Historical documents reveal that she studied male psychology as a science. Every gesture, every word, every moment of closeness or distance was calculated to maximize emotional dependence. The technique she used still works today because it exploits the same neurological wiring that hasn't changed in 2,000 years. Third revelation. The ultimate psychological weapon, strategic withdrawal of validation. Behavioral studies show that humans respond more intensely to loss than to gain. Women have figured out how to turn their very presence into a scarce commodity. The more you chase her, the more valuable she becomes. The more valuable she becomes, the more you chase her. It's a self-reinforcing neurological loop that hacks your brain's reward system. Nietzsche was right about one thing: power is will. But he was wrong about where true power lies. It is not in strength, wealth, or social influence. It is in the ability to remain indifferent. The man who needs external validation has already lost before the battle begins. Greene has found that the only men immune to female emotional manipulation are those who have developed what he calls radical detachment. It's not misogyny, it's applied Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not over external events. Realize this and you will find strength." But here's the cruel paradox Greene revealed. The less you need female approval, the more it comes naturally. It's like emotional gravity in reverse. The law of magnetic indifference works because it defies women's evolutionary programming. For millions of years, women have developed radars to detect high-value men. High-value men, by definition, have options. Men with options don't beg for attention. The greatest irony of human sexual dynamics? The man who fully understands how female manipulation works automatically becomes immune to it. Knowledge is the antidote, but there is a psychological price for this freedom that most men are unwilling to pay. Here's the truth that will turn everything you thought you knew upside down. Women are not the enemy in this game. They're just better players. They've evolved more sophisticated strategies because they've had to survive without obvious physical advantages. Resenting this is like resenting lions for being better hunters than gazelles. Nature isn't fair, it's efficient. Greene has come to a disturbing conclusion after decades of studying power dynamics. Modern men live in a state of perpetual emotional infantilization because they've never learned the real rules of the game they're playing. They've been conditioned to believe that love is spontaneous, that attraction is mysterious, that relationships are based on compatibility. All of these beliefs serve the system that keeps you predictable and controllable. True male power doesn't come from dominating women. It comes from not needing to dominate them because you've mastered yourself. But there's one final secret Greene has discovered, something so disturbing that he hesitated years before making it public. A behavioral pattern that separates the 1% of men who truly understand power from the 99% who live in constant delusion. This pattern isn't about seduction techniques or relationship strategies. It's about something much more fundamental: the neurological difference between men who react and men who respond. And if you figure out which category you fall into, your life will never be the same. The final question that will haunt you: are you living your own life or just reacting to the stimuli others have put in your path?